who know how this building will work and have seen their fair share of scandals over the years. Bruce Hawker and Grahame Morris join me now. Bruce Hawker, firstly to you, did you find Mr Thompson's statement convincing this afternoon?
Look, I thought it was a rather rambling presentation. It wasn't really particularly crisp, and I didn't sort of feel Clarence Darrow or Atticus Finch coming out there. But in a sense, it isn't really a question about whether I find it convincing or anybody else finds it convincing. It's really whether criminal charges are going to be laid in this matter, and therefore whether the appropriate courts are going to take a decision about his actions. That's really where it all resides, and I think more and more it's coming down to that very point, Ashleigh, that we can all have opinions about it, but at the end of the day, that's all they are. They're really opinions. The real issue here is whether there was a criminal act, and of course, as Tony Windsor pointed out earlier, if there is criminality, if there's a sentence of a year or more, then of course he could be expelled from Parliament. But we don't know that yet, and we may never know that. So it was just another really unhelpful instalment, I think, in a series of really bad days for the government whenever the Craig Thompson issue comes up.
Grahame, we heard Craig Thompson say that the opposition has found a lynch mob mentality. Craig Thompson went through the number of death threats he's been getting, people writing to him saying, have you slit your wrists yet? Can you hang yourself? That's the best way to get out of all of this. Has the opposition taken it too far? What happened to the presumption of innocence in this building?
I get the same calls, and I'm not even in Parliament. Look, I'm going to give up buying the sort of Stieg Larsson and the Linda LaPlante and all of those conspiracy books at airports and just read Hansard from here on in. Look, I watched this bloke, and I actually thought for a bloke fighting for his political life and fighting for the life of this government, he actually did quite well on first blush. If it was, did he raise a few things, a bit of doubt about a few of the allegations? Well, yeah, he raised a bit of doubt. But then those people he named all came out and said he was talking through his posterior and it was all delusional, it was all weird. And it was even in his own stuff, it was all the media's fault or the opposition's fault. But I want to meet the person who wrote it. It was very, very clever, because the only way he can really get into trouble, except from the criminal stuff, is if he misled the Parliament. And in every case, he said, an inquiry found this bit, a journalist found that bit, somebody in a newspaper said this bit. And in each case, if somebody finds that any of it is wrong, he'll be able to say, well, look, sorry, I didn't mislead the Parliament. All I was doing was quoting someone else. So it was very, very cleverly written. And presumably with that in mind, because if he did mislead the Parliament, then I think the independents really do have no choice but to suspend him, and that will change the Parliament.
Bruce, how do you see the politics playing out from here? Was this really a big turning point today, or do you think that it is going to kind of continue on, as we've seen in recent weeks and months, with so much pressure being lumped on Craig Thompson, Labor and the Prime Minister and her handling of this situation? Look,
I think it'll probably just keep eking out in one way or another. When you get politicians under the pump like Craig Thompson clearly is, then you have every journalist in the country out there, trying to trawl through his private life, find a story like was revealed in the media on the weekend, which just adds another element to the story and keeps it going. I don't think there's any easy way for the government through this issue other than to keep repeating the obvious, and that is that it's not up to Parliament to find him guilty of anything. And the days when you impeached presidents and kings and other people are over in this country, and also that the Liberal Party can take the moral high ground on this issue, like we saw with George Brandis, but frankly, it rings a little bit hollow given their experiences with people like Mary Jo Fisher and others in the past who have been found guilty of offences and still voted in the Parliament on important pieces of legislation. So I don't think there's many places for the government really to go on this. I think they just have to keep pushing and pushing on the other issues that they feel are stronger for them. They've got the compensation package for carbon in place place and so forth. I think that's where they have to go much more than here.
Hey, Bruce,
just being dragged back into it again is always a problem.
Bruce, let's say we give him the benefit, 100% benefit of the doubt. You know, if you look at what he actually said, he was saying that this trade union, which when you think about it, just looks after, you know, people who work in hospitals and aged care and whatnot. In other words, you know, quite reasonable sort of people, not people working in some other drongo unions. He's saying that this union, he's saying that this union is full of so much corruption and conspiracy and everything else. He's essentially made a case today for getting stuck into every union, particularly the grubby ones, and this one, you know, you wouldn't have thought was grubby, and also for blowing up Fair Work Australia. You know, the Labor Party, if it stands behind him, has to seriously have a look at what his allegations are. And that means the links with the trade unions generally, and Fair Work Australia, if he's even half right. The other sort of case is that he really is delusional, and that he actually believes all this stuff, even though he seems to be a judge and jury of one person.
Grahame and Bruce, I know that you could keep talking about this all afternoon. We have had a jam-packed show, and I do need to wrap you up because we need to get back to the news. We haven't had the other news of the day for some time now. So thank you both for your time. That's it for PM Agenda. More analysis and reaction coming up throughout the evening.